Hello, welcome back to another live stream for Fresh Faces, New Ideas. I'm David. I'm your host. So let's do a quick shout out to how things are gonna go. So once again, please like and subscribe this video. If you know anyone who might be interested in this content or somebody who you think would enjoy this, please send the links to everybody. You know, the more people that see this, the better it is. The more outreach I have. You can always follow me on Twitter. My Twitter is @FaceIdeas. Once again, this is the Fresh Faces, New Ideas live stream, and we are covering a whole bunch of different stuff today. So, very quickly, I just wanted to go over what the actual future of how I'm going to do this is. So, during the week, I'm going to start producing like little videos, about 15 to half-hour minute videos about like what's going on in different topics of the day. And then for Fridays, I'm going to start doing a live stream Friday. So that's what I'll do, like a big overall coverage of what's has gone on during the week, and for anything that's happened on over the night in between whenever my last video was and then the live stream. So usually the live stream is going to be probably around 1 on Friday. That gives me time to go through any of the news of the morning and to look through the videos to see what has the most engagement, so that those topics are the ones that I can look into a little bit more. So that's where the future is. The future for the next week is going to be, covering the day's topics. There'll be probably a couple of videos a day, and then it'll be on Fridays. Will be live stream Fridays. If you also like what I say, I have been a co-host for Center Left Radio for like 3 years now. It was right after March, after the Parkland happened. So that's when I started. You can follow that on their website. I will have links to their Twitter and my Twitter after I'm done with this live stream. You can, if you go to a podcast, if you just listen to SNLF Radio, it is there. So the places that you can find me if you enjoy what you're listening to is you can listen to it at Twitter @FaceIdeas. You can obviously find me here for any of the future content at Fresh Faces, No Ideas. And you can find me as the co-host of Center Left Radio. So that's where you can find me. And let's talk a little bit about what the plan is for today. So for today, we're going to discuss, Texas. We're going to go a little deeper into that. There's been some updates since I did the show on Wednesday. We're going to talk about Biden's town hall. I've gone through it. I've watched it. My thoughts on that. Rush Limbaugh passed. We might discuss that for a little bit. But this is mostly going to be about, Texas and the Joe Biden town hall. So for the first thing with Texas, so as we all know, there's been a massive cold front through just like the middle of the country. I'm sure most people have seen the maps. It's just the giant, it's cold right through the middle, and then the eastern and the western seaboard are basically warm. So Texas is basically unable to do basically the most simple things. Their power grid failed. People have to boil water in order to be alive and in order to use it. And it's just been a struggle for them. They haven't been able to handle the weather. They haven't handled the cold. And to be fair to Texas, they shouldn't have had to they weren't ready for this because this type of thing doesn't tend to happen in Texas. But they failed even on the most basic levels. So the narrative that came out from right-wing groups and, former Texas Governor Rick Perry and the current Texas Governor Greg Abbott is that Texas is in this situation because the Green New Deal has already been passed and implemented in Texas. This thing already happened. Nobody knew about it. Somehow the seventh thing on the list that Joe Biden had, and even a thing he wasn't even for, passed and allowed him to, and it's already gone into effect. So according to these people, Texas is now running almost entirely on wind power, only on renewables, and the reason it failed is because it got cold, and the windmills failed, and then basically the sun went away, so you can't use solar. That's pretty much the extent of the thought process that went into their argument. Except none of that is true. So first off, the Green New Deal has not passed. It has not been brought up for any type of vote. There's no actual Green New Deal legislation. The extent of the Green New Deal has so far just been a single-page document that has been points for what it would ultimately be. It would be pushing toward these type of things. But it has not passed. It has not been brought up for a vote. And Joe Biden is not for it. So you can't have this thing where it's supposed to be this like economic changing thing, and you say it's happened, except nothing has actually happened yet. So there's that. So first off, that's just a blatant lie. That it's there and nothing's happening. The second thing is that if you look at the data, like the actual data for how much energy Texas uses from wind turbines, it's like 13%, and it's like 10% of the turbines have failed to produce power. But if you compare it to the oil and the gas industry, they've just had catastrophic failures. All their wells have been shut down. Their pipes are frozen. They just can't produce the energy that they're supposed to be able to produce. And this is kind of done on purpose. So how this happened was that when there was when the energy grid became nationalized, there was a West Coast, there was an East Coast, and so it would be regulated by the government. However, what Texas did was they created their own closed circuit. So they have their own closed circuit about how the government works, their own closed circuit of the energy sector. So that way they're not required to do any federal regulations. They're only doing whatever regulations are, in Texas. And there basically were none, because the way that Texas wanted to do it was, we're just going to let these companies do whatever they want, and we'll say it's for freedom, it's for jobs, it's whatever. So what ended up happening is all of these companies, Epcot is the one main one. They basically produced just whatever they needed. They didn't need to save any fuel for reserves. They didn't basically prep for some type of like major weather event, because they weren't required to. So they did exactly what they were supposed to, which was make a profit. And the reason this is a problem is, as we saw, so there are wind turbines that failed. They absolutely failed. But why did they fail? And it's because they chose not to be ready for this. The wind turbines they had were not cold proof. They weren't prepped for winter weather. And just this thought that turbines only work in the heat doesn't make any sense, because there's bases in Antarctica powered solely by wind turbines. Like, it doesn't get colder than that. So if you're saying that they can do it in Antarctica, but they can't do it in Texas, that doesn't make any sense. Furthermore, there's no other state that's had such a catastrophic energy failure. The other states have had just as bad, if not more, cold weather than Texas. Sure, some of the ones that were up north of the Dakotas and stuff are a little bit more accustomed to having cold weather, but their energy didn't fail. And it didn't fail because they were prepared for this. And so the way to fix this type of thing is to put some actual regulations on this. And I know all the Republicans will say, well, regulations are bad and it stifles, growth and the economy and all that. But there's certain things that you have to be able to regulate. They're just too important and too vital to not have the actual government, make sure that these are set standards. One of them is energy. The other one, honestly, should be healthcare. And part of the reason for the healthcare one is, if you're sick, there is no amount of money that you wouldn't pay in order to, get better. So if you, like, EpiPens are the perfect example. When the Farmer Bro guy pumped them up, they put them up to like $600. People weren't, the people who still needed them. So it's not like they weren't. The people who couldn't get them couldn't afford them, but they still needed them. It wasn't their choice. Like, oh, I guess I'm not going to have an EpiPen because, the free market has decided that I'm not going to. It was too expensive for them. And so it was a life decision and a life-threatening decision for them to be unable to do this. And it's similar to what's happening in Texas. Their inability to make all of the energy prepared for this type of weather, and the inability for them to be able to get other energy from the other parts of the states and other states, which is what happens in other states where, if your grid fails, I'm connected to the next state over. So like California is connected to Nevada and all the states that are near to it. So that if your grid starts to failing, they can give you the energy in order to make sure outcomes like this don't happen. So the other problem with this is the leaders who are saying this. So part of is Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson is is obviously out here saying, windmills are their fashion accessory that nobody really cares about. This is just a flight of fancy, and green energy itself is a hoax, and that it's just for making people who a few people rich off the discovered subsidies, which is kind of a weird thing to say because that's pretty much how the energy resources go. Is how gas and how oil works. Is they just get huge subsidies so that they can function because they wouldn't be able to profit without these huge subsidies. And this is the argument for the Green New Deal, is you have to put better clean energy that's less likely to fail through these type of things, and then you subsidize them until they can stand up on their own and combat these foods. Because fossil fuels, as it is, oil is like the oldest energy source. It's been around for like 100 years, and it's had like the longest amount of subsidies. So the fact that they still need subsidies shows you it's not a good working business model. The other people who are the problem are, Rick Perry. Rick Perry, who was the energy secretary under Donald Trump for a while, said that Texans would rather go cold for 3 days than have the government regulate them, and it's a freedom issue. That's what he said, which is such a ludicrous and crazy thing to have said, because the people who are freezing don't think that. I mean, like, who goes, like, if you went and asked these people who are freezing and you said, would you rather continue to freeze for a couple of days and have this, have these type of constant catastrophic failures every time there's, just terrible weather, whether it be these hurricanes like it happened with Harvey, or whether it's this snowstorm, or whether it's whatever the next one is, be it an earthquake or heat wave or whatever is that causes a natural disaster? Or would you rather have the government help come regulate a few things so that some of these things can be regulated so that you're not constantly dealing with all of these problems? So the other thing is Joe Biden's response. So Joe Biden's response was, all right, Texas, you need these funds. So he sent funds. He's waiting for the bill to get to his desk so that, because he has to wait for Congress to authorize it, because that's how Congress has the power of the purse. So once they authorize it, he can send the FEMA aid, he can send the generators, he can send all the things that Texas needs in order to help get back on its feet to do this. But the difference between Joe Biden and with Donald Trump is you're not hearing anything saying, oh, Texas, this is all your fault because, you didn't vote for me. And if you had voted for me, then, maybe I'd be more willing to give you a little bit more. And, maybe you wouldn't be in such a terrible situation if you just, shoveled better or whatever ridiculous thing. Because this is the same man who said, the California wildfires are caused because they don't rake their forest. So the fact that Joe Biden already this is like the third biggest crisis that he has to deal with at this point. The first, obviously being COVID, and then the economy. This is like his first issue that's really Joe Biden that wasn't already set up before Joe Biden came into office. The fact that he's sat there and is like, yeah, okay, obviously you people need help, so I'm going to give it to you, is that's just what a normal president does. So that's good that we're getting that. On the other hand, you have more of Texas leaders. Most famous is Ted Cruz, of course, because he is Ted Cruz, and everything he does is just ridiculous. So Ted Cruz, for those of you who don't remember, when Superstorm Sandy hit, was adamant about blocking the funds in order to help New York. He was just like, no, we can't, this is too much disaster aid. We can't be giving it to New York. They got to pick it up by themselves. They made fun of California. When California was on fire, they sent them a whole bunch of rakes after that. So Ted Cruz, fresh off of vindicating Donald Trump from having an insurrection and being part of pushing for the insurrection himself, has decided to take his family and flee. So his argument was, this came out over a couple of days that, some people got pictures of Ted Cruz and then it went back to, okay, well, are these real accurate pictures of Ted Cruz? Are these now, or are they photoshopped from, a couple of years ago, wherever he went? And then, people did more digging, and then Fox broke the story that Ted Cruz, in the midst of Texas freezing, in the midst of it losing power, has taken his family and went to Cancun. So as this built and as the firestorm built, Ted Cruz ultimately made a statement. His first statement was, it was my kids. My house was freezing and it was really cold, and my kids were like, well, school's canceled for the week, so can we just go somewhere warm? And, I, as the great dad that I am, I had to go take them down to Cancun with my wife, and then I was coming right back. First off, if he's staying in Cancun, I'm pretty sure he has to quarantine for a while just because, COVID. And I know he doesn't believe in COVID. The fact that he was wearing a mask was just crazy to me anyway, because a lot of times he doesn't. So, he blamed his kids, which is, par for the course of Ted Cruz, because when Donald Trump called his wife ugly, his response was, yeah, okay, whatever you say, Donald. And people were like, oh, no, that's not fair. He defended her. But then when it came down to it, there's that famous Ted Cruz picture of him phone banging for Donald. So, I mean, if you insult his family enough, he's really not going to defend them. So he threw his kids under a bus, he blamed them, and then ultimately he got a ticket back and he flew back to Texas. And his response basically to all of this was, I'm doing what any regular father would do if they had the means to do it. And the problem is that most of the Texans don't. They don't. And this idea that, if all you have to do is just leave is the same stupid logic for people who have their houses flooded because of rising sea levels. It's like, oh, just leave. Just sell your house and go. So for Ted Cruz, that logic is, yeah, I don't need to be here because I can leave, so I'm just gonna go. And he was like, well, I can come in through Zoom, I can come in through, I'm in contact with people, but there wasn't really that much I could do. So now I left, and now I'm coming back, and I have to figure out how to get to the bottom of this. But the thing is, I guarantee you that the result that they get from this is not, oh, we need to regulate the power grid. It's going to be something, oh, this was just a fluke of nature, and we'll figure it out, and we'll find this company some X amount of dollars that'll be like a percentage of what they make for a quarter, and then they'll be like, all right, so they'll say that they fix it, and then the next time they'll do the exact same thing. It's almost the same exact thing that happens with PG&E, which is the California electric company that keeps having their power lines burn down forests, because to them it is, once again, it is still more profitable for them to burn down the forest and get fined for that than in order to them to make the power lines that they already have, underground, or so they won't cause this damage. And that's what's going to happen with this Texas company. There's no way that they're going to have any type of restrictions other than a couple fines, and in order to make sure that the power grid is successful. So the defenders of Ted Cruz have been people like Dinesh D'Souza and Ben Shapiro. And Dinesh D'Souza, his argument was, it's good that Ted Cruz is gone, because if Ted Cruz was there, then he would be taking valuable resources from people who need them, because that's what, the less people, the less resources, which is just absurd, because if, as he left, he had to take the cops away with him because he needed protection from, the people who support him, because he's scared of them, which is the same thing Lindsey Graham had, was, they get yelled at in airports, and they get afraid of them, so they need this protection. And then you have Ben Shapiro, whose argument is, well, what else is he going to do? He's not going to get on his hands and knees and do the blowtorch himself. He's not going to, maybe he can send out a few tweets like Beto is doing, but that's not really anything. And then he said, these New York journalists who are in New York, why aren't they here handing out food in the soup kitchen? First off, the sheer stupidity of that quote is just mind-boggling. And I'm going to look to see if I can ultimately find this video, because I'm going to probably cover it during the week, is just talking about how dumb this quote is. The journalists in New York who are doing their jobs reporting on this should not be doing their jobs, but they should then instead be in Texas doing soup kitchens instead of the senator from Texas being in Texas doing anything to help. And as for his Beto comment, he was like, oh, Beto's just sending out a few tweets, which just isn't true. So Beto's working also with AOC. They're helping to fundraise. They're doing phone check-ins to help people. The most recent tweet from him, or when this Ben Shapiro video came out yesterday, was that they were, they're calling in and checking on people, seeing, who has power, if they can get them, help. And they found this old man who was like, I don't really have any power. I don't really know where to go. And they were able to help him get to a shelter where he can find some more, he could just find, resources that were helping him. So, and they were reaching out to people. They said, look, the more volunteers that we have, the more people that we can reach. The more people that we can reach, the better we can do, because we want to be able to reach all these Texans who, either we can maybe offer them some food assistance, we can offer them some financial assistance, we can offer them, assistance of where to go in order to be warm and have energy and things like that. So that's what Beto's doing. And keep in mind, Beto isn't in the government anymore. So what happened with Beto was he was a congressman for Texas. And then he ran for Senate against Ted Cruz, and he lost. And then he ran for president, and he lost. So now he's just a private citizen. So whatever poll he has is infinitely less than, Ted Cruz, who's just had massive donors that he can, reach out to and say, look, my people need help. Can you, help get us these resources? Or, reach out to Joe Biden. Well, I mean, look, that's at the bare minimum. There's only so much that the federal government can do. Or let me rephrase it. His job should be to making sure that the federal government goes above and beyond in order to take care of the people of his state. Because that's what, look, even Trump was, Trump put this perfectly. He was like, I don't remember which disasters he was talking about, right? He said this a couple times where he said, I didn't really want to help that much, but you made such a compelling argument, which is just a crazy, crazy statement anyway for the president of the United States. But whichever disaster and error it was, he was like, yeah, Senator, he pushed real hard, and he twisted my arm, and I was like, all right, fine, we'll give you this extra money and stuff. So this is something that Ted Cruz could be doing, because you're already one of those people who is seen as, one of the people who created the event that happened on the January 6th. You're one of the people who's already very disliked. You're one of the people who is vying for, the face of the party after Donald Trump, whether or not he runs in 2024. So wouldn't it make sense that you would try to do something to make people like you a little bit, to give yourself some good graces? I mean, just at a bare political minimum, it would make sense that you would want to be like out front saying, look, I'm fighting for Joe Biden, or whatever. I'm fighting for Texas, and I'm saying, Joe Biden, you giving us X amount of money is not enough. We need more. Where are these resources? How do we get them? Just look. This actually goes to the Cuomo thing very quickly. During COVID, he had all these press conferences and saying, this is what we need. Here's why we need them. Here's what we know about this, and that. There's a lot of lies in that. But Ted Cruz could be doing that, or John Cornyn, or any of their actual leaders can say, look, I know you don't have access to some of these things, but we're pushing it out. We're figuring out how to make sure that Texans are safe during this freezing storm where they don't have power and stuff. But instead, he went to Cancun, he came back, and when he was interviewed about it, he was like, yeah, as soon as I sat on the plane, I started thinking it was a bad idea. So then the next day, I bought a ticket to come home, and that's how I'm here. And then instead of doing these things, he went on to Sean Hannity to talk about, look, I made a mistake, or it's not that big a deal, or I did it for my kids, and that's I'm a good father because that's why I did it. Is for the kids, and now I'm here. I'm fighting for Texas. We're gonna get to the bottom of it. So look. Well, it's going to take a couple more days for this, at least a couple more days for the crisis to, abate, for them to be able to see, who needs power and get all the power back to the people, for all the resources and stuff to go through it. And then from there, we'll be able to learn, what can be done in order to push things forward, what will be done. And the last point on this is for people who are saying, well, you get what you voted for. They're only like half truths. Because the people who vote for Republicans don't always know, the things that they're pushing for, or they're lied to a lot by the things that they're pushing for. So, they weren't, the people in this generation were not responsible for voting for this set of Republicans who had the power grid separate. But, when they're talking about deregulation and, we're against the federal government, and our whole point is in order to make sure that people don't, people, they have their freedoms and stuff, because that's what Texas is about, is all their freedoms. And then they're lying to them about, the Green New Deal and how they're actually getting their energy. That's the problem. So when you see this, this is what happened to your state. Hopefully, these people will take an actual look at it, or they'll be able to, or they'll be curious enough to know, like, why did this happen, and then look into it. Or when Ted Cruz comes up for re-election in 2024, or whoever their Congress people are in 2022, or whoever's up whenever they're up in their next election, you ask them, why did this happen? How did this happen? How are you going to make sure that this doesn't happen again? And look, there's no way ultimately to never have natural disasters happen. You just can't do that. It's not possible, because the natural disasters, there's certain things we can't do. Could we lessen them? Hopefully, if we implemented more green technology and started fighting climate change more, we would be able to lessen the effects of some of these terrible storms. So we wouldn't be getting hit by, once in 1,000 years, once in every 500 years, hurricanes like every 2 years. Or last year, where we had like 7 Category 5 hurricanes all going on at the same time. So, look, the people of Texas, I hope things work out for you. And the government is going to do the best that it can, but you have to be able to hold your actual politicians accountable for the decisions that they made that led you to this situation, and how you're going to and how they're going to rectify it. So that's what needs to be done. There needs to be an actual investigation. This company needs to be held accountable, and not the people who are pushing that it's green energy's fault. That makes no sense. All right, so we're going to go to the next topic, which is the Joe Biden town hall. So it was an interesting town hall. There was a lot of things in it that were good, and there were some things in it that were bad. The good is, obviously, he said teachers should be vaccinated, which, like I covered on my last live stream, makes sense. Look, part of the reason the teachers are fighting so hard to not go back into schools is because they're scared. They don't feel like they're going to be protected when they go to school. And like he said to the little kid, it's less likely that you're going to contract COVID and have ill effects from it. But the problem is that little kid is also going to produce it to the teachers, who are more likely to have to be older, to have comorbidities and other issues that would make COVID more of a danger to them. So the push to have teachers vaccinated just makes sense. You got to have teachers vaccinated because it'll make them more comfortable. So then that way, even if their classrooms aren't as segmented as they should be, or as small as they should be, at least the teachers are more aware that, okay, well, now I'm not as likely to bring it home to my family. Then the push for that would also be, if you expand it into teachers, then their kids are less likely to go home and give it to their parents, because maybe their parents are teachers as well. But the argument that just because teachers, these teachers are just making ridiculous demands in order to, just not do anything. They just want to be safe. I like, and the push to open schools isn't, they're all going to be disingenuous and say, oh, it's about the kids. They're losing schooling, there's suicide rates and all of that stuff. It's not the push is to open up the economy. That's why they're pushing for kids to go back to schools, because they view them as babysitters. So pushing for teacher vaccinations is, it's a good thing. And I think he's able to reach out to guidelines and say, look, once you hit your first responders, your first set of comorbidities, then you go teachers, or however he wants to do that. Because at this point, I imagine most first responders are, at least to some extent, vaccinated at least one way. The other answer that was really, really good was when they were asked about his stimulus. So right now he has the $1.9 trillion stimulus. And this stimulus, as we mentioned, it's a good bill. It's good. And Joe Biden's response was basically, this is the first time ever that stimulus is viewed as something that we can't go high enough on. And he's right, because the more that you put into this now, the more we're going to get out at the other side. Part of the reason we've had so many stimulus bills is because they haven't been targeted in the correct ways. We didn't give people, even this bill is not giving people enough money. It was supposed to be $2,000, it's $1,400. That's the, we can yell about that however much, but that's what it came down to. But even the 1,400, that's not enough for the people who've basically gone the whole year, and the only help from the government was about $1,800, depending on whether or not you got the first 1,200 or if you've received the second $600 in the previous bill. So that's a good help there. If it has the actual minimum wage, the minimum wage increase, which it appears that it should, and this argument over minimum wage needs to be the minimum wage argument. I kind of went over this before. Was there needs to just be an increase in minimum wage, because this idea that you run companies out of a business, or that CBO report that said that they would lose 1.4 million jobs didn't take into account the jobs that would be made. They actually changed the methodology that they studied this from the first to in 2019 to 2020. They changed the methodology of how they were doing the study to get a different result. But it's also like, if I'm working 2 jobs for like $7 an hour, and then you double my pay, so I only have to work 1 job. Well, that counts as a job loss, but it's not really a job loss, because now I don't have to work at that job in order to feed my family. It's like, so it's not like 2 people are losing. It's not like one person is now out of work. It's me not working multiple jobs. So that's going to impact a lot of it. And a lot of it was also in working hours. So if I'm working 2 40-hour jobs a week and all those hours are gone, it's the same argument. Those hours aren't coming out of somebody else's pay. I'm no longer required to do that in order to survive. And it's also the money that would go into these people's pockets would increase the flow into the rest of the economy. If I have the money, I can pay my bills, I can go shopping, I can go, if you give me $10 and then I have to go buy food with that $10 then circulates to the store, that store owner then pays, whatever bills he has to pay, and then it circulates there. So that's the push. And then for the other argument of, it's going to put small businesses out of work, then you just subsidize them. You can look, we just remove some of the subsidies that we have to pay, because right now, if you force companies like Walmart and Amazon to pay their workers a living wage, then you don't have to pay them money in order to get those same workers who are basically working on starvation wages food stamps. So that money can then go to something else. So helping more people have a higher wage makes sense. And I don't know, I think Kristen Sinema is more likely to be moved on this than Joe Manchin. I don't understand how he had a conversation with his constituents, and he was still to them like, look, I'm giving you 11. I'm not giving you 50. I don't understand that. And I guess the way you push that is you look him down in the face and you say, look, Joe, is the only way to get you on top of this bill is if we say that only West Virginia is 11? Because that's what we'll do. And this idea that, you have to have, it's not for people who are making, it's why do kids need to do this? A lot of people work minimum wage jobs. It's, you can't look down at these people who do things like flipping burgers and the other menial tasks that we consider them menial, that we pay them so little for. Like even teachers and Amazon workers get paid very little. So, but they're considered essential workers, so we should pay them in order to have essential lives. They should be able to live on these jobs that we have deemed essential. It does so instead of clapping for them, we should pay them so that they can have a life. And that's how you increase your this whole idea of the pulling you up by the bootstraps. So if you increase their pay and they don't have to work 60 hours a week, they only have to work 40 hours a week. That's 20 hours a week that they can do for leisure. That's 20 hours a week that maybe they can start pushing for studying in order to benefit themselves. So the more time you give people to do their own thing, because they are now secure in having food and having a house, it's a better thing. Because look, as it stands now, there's nowhere in the country where you can survive on minimum wage and have a 2-bedroom apartment. 0 places in the country. So that's part of the push. The other thing is he had a couple of really bad statements, and one of them is on student debt. So this goes directly in the face of what he just said about the stimulus. He said, we can't go big enough on the stimulus, but I'm not going to go big on student debt. And now I think there's a little bit personal stuff to this in his student debt argument. So currently what he says is, I'm going to do $10,000 of student debt forgiveness, which is good. I mean, it's a good start. I think it's 1.7 or $1.4 trillion of student debt we have in this country, which is just a massive, stupid amount. So, you pay $10,000 would be something, but if you gave $50,000 it would be a lot more. And study after study has shown, similar to the minimum wage, if you forgive these debts, these people will make the economy grow more. And his argument against this is twofold. One, he says he doesn't think he has the power to do $50,000. So my understanding of how this came about is there's an argument about whether he had the power to freeze interest rates on these loans, and that came from Betsy DeVos's Department of Education, which was like the most anti-student Department of Education we've had, at least in my lifetime. So he's waiting for his DOJ to look into it. The problem with the fact that it's his DOJ is he doesn't have an AG yet, because they held up Merrick Garland for basically this entire time, because the first basically month of his administration, Mitch McConnell couldn't agree to a power sharing compromise, so he would literally filibustered the Senate. So even though the Democrats had the majority, the Republicans were still in control of the committees because they didn't have a power sharing agreement. So they went back to the previous one, which was under Donald Trump, where the Senate was still in control of Republicans. So there was that. So we still don't have an AG, so it's not clear who would ultimately take charge of that. The other thing is, I think he's pushed back on this a little bit because part of the reason the student debt crisis is so bad is directly Joe Biden's fault. And for those of you who don't remember, during the primary, because it wasn't really covered enough, was Joe Biden authored a bill that made it impossible to declare bankruptcy in your student loan debt. So if you declare bankruptcy, there's certain kind of debts that you can't get rid of, and student loans are one of those debts. So I think that's a little bit of it. He doesn't want to say that he made a mistake, because Joe Biden has had some truly terrible bills. The crime bill and the student debt one are among the most horrible. But him push. So I don't ultimately understand where he came from. Like somewhere between 10 and 50,000, it became illegal. And the other thing is, this just goes in the face of go big. If you have the ability to go big and be able to change these people's lives and stimulate the economy in this way that economists and people who study this have said that it is, there's no reason not to. The reasoning can't be, this, and this is the other argument. This is the same argument for that they make against universal free college as well. We don't want to do it for people who, they went to these great schools and they got all this stuff, and we don't want to do it for people who are just going to just be handed out benefits for people at the top. And it's the same argument for like, oh, my kid is a legacy at Harvard, well, now I get to go there for free. But the problem with both of these arguments is it's not, that percentage is so small. Like as it stands now, Joe Biden's stance on free college is 4-year schools. I believe if your family makes under $150,000 combined, and I think it's HUBCs, and I think it's some 2-year schools as well. So this idea that the perfect example is that Don Jr. would have gone to Eastern Kentucky Western State and gotten his college paid for, is just like, okay, well, why would he not just pay the millions of extra dollars to go to Harvard like all these other rich people? So the fact that you're going to delay it for all of these people to save, because of a few, is the same stupid argument that they had with the stimulus about who should get the stimulus. They're saying, oh, well, we don't want people who have $300,000 to get the stimulus. Okay, but that's not in the bill. The bill doesn't say if you have $300,000, you make $300,000, you're going to get a stimulus. The bill says that these people do it, and in order to make sure that those people don't make it, you just tax them on the back end. But that's irrelevant. So going back to this argument is, we've been told that the only way to do better in life is to go to get the best education, to go to the best schools and to because that's what you need in order to step forward. The problem with that is schools like Harvard and stuff, they charge a massive amount of money. So if I'm in a lower middle class family and my grades are good enough and I manage to get into Harvard, but I don't get a full ride, I'm gonna have to take out thousands of dollars, like $100,000 in loans. Even if you work through school, you're still gonna have thousands of dollars in loans. So and now there's no job market anyway, and we already knew that this generation, my generation, was going to make less than our parents anyway because of the '08 crash, and now we're going to make even less because of the COVID pandemic, and then the generation behind us is going to make even less than us because that's how our economy has been scheduled now, is that you constantly make less than the previous generation because all the wealth is at the top. So he really needs to be pushed on this one. I think because even his government has kind of said, like we're looking at 50. I'm pretty sure Jen Psaki said we'd rather push for 50 than for 10. And even if you say, okay, this is the other thing. Let's say you only ultimately decide to do 10. Why not push for 50 and then maybe negotiate it down? That this is like if the ultimate red line in the sand for you is 10, don't say that out loud. Push for 40 and then come down to 10, but get something else in return. So get free college for a certain level of students in return for the money that you would have then forgiven for the student loan debts. And is that a good solution? Maybe, probably not as good as forgiving all these loans. Yes, forgiving all the loans would ultimately be the best solution, but don't cap yourself and actually fight for something higher so that whatever your actual position is, you can then just push for that. So that's where he stood on that. His other answer on China didn't really make a lot of sense because, look, we all know that they're doing some type of genocide with the Uyghurs, and it's bad. In Hong Kong, the problems with Hong Kong and Hong Kong's authority, who controls Hong Kong's government, has been a fight for months. And part of the problem now is America can't ultimately take this stand that, we stand for democracy when we're little less than a month, a little more than a month removed from trying to overthrow our same democracy. What are they going to say about the protests? We've watched the police officers assault the Black Lives Matter protesters during the summer. So like the same tactics that we would then decry in China are the same things that we do at home. So it's not like we have a moral authority there. The Uyghur thing, he really should have pushed more forcefully. Now look, I'm not about to do, I know some things come off as whataboutism, but Joe Biden saying that, they have their culture, that he knows we have to yell at them because of our culture. But I mean, it's genocide. It's not a cultural thing. It's bad either way. I'm not saying, tell them it's a good job like Donald Trump did, but, you could actually forcefully push against it and, come out against it and say something about it. On the other hand, you could also let the kids out of their cages because that hasn't been solved either. They said they're trying to do it, but they haven't, really pushed for it. And, it is good that he has started to remove the Remain in Mexico policy and that they're reviewing a lot of the immigration stuff that the Trump administration did. And one of the things I think I'm covering next week, because I'm pretty sure it's coming out next week, if not that, then the week after, is they're going to come out with their own immigration bill. And I know there was a bill that was proposed by Romney, and I'm pretty sure it was on $15 minimum wage, but it was tied to immigration for some reason. I don't remember seeing all the details on that. I'm going to have to look into that, and I'll probably do a piece on that as I find out more details. But the problem with, you'd say, oh, the Chinese Communist Party is so bad. And look, they definitely have their issues. There's certainly many issues. But the thing is, like, where are you going to stand when a lot of the things that you're going to argue against we've done very recently? So if you can obviously say the answer of it's a cultural thing, or it's a cultural difference that I have to yell at him for this, and he understands that, is not a good answer. But saying, look, you can't be doing this. I understand we're having our own problems, but we're not genociding people. You can't. That's where you focus on the genocide, and then you push for the Hong Kong stuff. And the way to push for the for making Hong Kong its own independent agency, as it already has, in the way it treats protesters, is when we have these issues at home, is to hold them accountable. Because as was reported today, it's now 6 officers who have been suspended without leave, and 29 officers who are under investigation for what happened at the during the January 6th riot. So as we stand now, originally it was 2 officers. It was the one who took the selfie with the rioters while it was happening, and then there was another one who put on a MAGA cap and then started directing them where to go into the building. So now that's expanded to 6 officers, and it's almost 30 are under investigation. And I don't know the total number of people in the Capitol Police and how many there actually are. I imagine it's significant. That's not a huge percentage, but the fact that there's any time it's a double-digit number is a problem, because these are the same. These are the people who, they're going to hear crying. Let me. Hold on. This look into who was responsible and who has these type of ideas has already been decried as, oh, they're trying to get rid of people who didn't vote for Joe Biden because they're against republicanism or they're against conservatism. This is the same thing that we see with their arguments on cancel culture. It's just not true. So when you hear these type of arguments, you have to look into what the actual thing they're looking at is. So if the thing that they're looking at for the Capitol Police and for other police officers and other military members is what they're looking at, is that the who has ties to white supremacy, or who has shown that they have they like by commenting and things that they are in support of like white supremacy groups, or these Proud Boys or the Boogaloo Boys or groups like this. And these are the type of people they're going after. They're not going. They don't give. Look, most cops are Republican. It was like 80%, 85% of them voted for Donald Trump in 2016, and that number definitely grew in 2020. So there's that. Oh, the other bad answer he had was about defund the police. So when the I think the guy was a pastor, asked him about it, he's like, no, we got to give them more money. And the problem with that is they already have too much money. It is. We have some, Denver's already started a program. There's other places that are initiating their own programs in order to, put more of their resources into the actual areas and not into the police, in order to make it so that the police job is easier, that they're not called for as many altercations, which they're not trained for, in order to make things, equitable. It's because the defund the police thing is not to abolish the police. Were there certainly people who were saying abolish the police? Yeah, but that's a fringe movement. It's the same way that there's there's fringe people. It's the same thing with like minimum wage, where you say, oh, let's put it to $50 minimum wage, and then there's people on the side saying, oh, well, why don't we make it $1 million? Like, it's such a stupid argument, to listen to that part. So the defund the police is about making sure the resources actually help the people who need it. So pushing for the areas that need the policing, so that they can shift it away from the police in order to put it into like schools, to put it into social services, to put it into social programs, in order to help people so they can deal with the root causes of crime and not just react to crime. Because that's been too much of what the problem is the reacting to crime and not solving it. Where was my? We were talking about the Capitol Police. So the other thing with that is, we don't know who, because of how much information it appeared that they had, and how they were able to make their way through the building. This is part of what the investigation has to show, is who helped them, who had ties to them. And if these people have ties to them, they should not be in these jobs, because it's actually a danger to them. There's the guy who took the selfie. There's the one who was pointing him out. The guy who was pointing him out was probably more dangerous than the one with the selfie, because that guy could have easily just been like, just a Trump supporter and caught up in the moment. But the guy who's telling them where to go is potentially putting people's lives in danger. So that's what the difference is there. And, to very quickly just talk about, conservatives being canceled, it's just a ridiculous statement, because if you look at the people who've been canceled, the girl from Gina Carano from The Mandalorian. So was she canceled because she supported Donald Trump? Was she canceled because of her tax views? No, she was canceled because she she pointed out she was making like Holocaust references to conservatives. It's just that's the reason. It's when you say something that's just so absurd that and insulting to actually that's not right. It's when you if they say you're being canceled for conservatism, and the conservatism that they're trying to defend is your ability to hate certain groups or your ability to discriminate against certain groups. That's not really conservative. That's just hate. So if your argument is, oh, Gina Carano was canceled for being conservative, then you're arguing that conservatism is hate, and that's what you have to have the distinction of. So this idea that people like Jim Jordan are pushing, that cancel culture is the up and up the worst thing facing the country. That's the number one issue. It's just absurd because coronavirus still exists and cancel culture is not really a thing. There is some people who are unfairly canceled, and then there was I guarantee you they're going to argue that this the mayor and the Austin mayor who said that it's not the government's job to help you at all. If you don't have water, just deal with it yourself, figure it out. If you don't have electricity, that's on you, figure it out yourself. You can't expect the government to give you handouts. And then he resigned. I'm sure they'll argue that, he was canceled as well. And then they'll say, why aren't you canceling, Maxine Waters for the things that she said, or for Kamala Harris, because they're just not genuine. They're not real arguments. It's just absurd. All right, so that's about wraps this up. So let's just go over some things very quickly. For the future of this channel, once again, please follow me on Twitter at FacesIdeas. You can, please like and subscribe. Please send this link out, the video, to anybody who you know who might like this, or you might think might be interested in the future. You can listen to me on Center Left Radio. There's ways to listen to me and find me elsewhere. The future of the channel is going to be, a whole bunch of just segmented videos about what is currently going on, and then we're going to do live stream Fridays where at 1 o'clock I'm going to start doing, these hour-long live streams, and then as, the community grows and as I get more followers, the live streams will either extend further or they'll be more often. Maybe I'll do them on a weekend, but we'll cross that bridge as it gets to it. So that's the future. Once again, like and subscribe. Please follow me on Twitter on FacesIdeas, and send this link to people, and then you can find me on Center Left Radio. So, quick recap: the Texas power outage was not caused by green energy. It was caused by a failure of their current electrical system because it has been so unregulated. Ted Cruz definitely made a mistake. He should not have gone away. But this idea that, him going away because he threw his family under the bus, or that there was nothing he could do, just doesn't make sense. His job is to make sure that the people of Texas are represented in the government, and a good way to represent the people of Texas during a crisis is to fight for them in the government, not run away to Cancun. The Joe Biden town hall, there's some good things. I'm happy that he's pushing for the higher stimulus. I'm happy that I'm happy with that, and he's willing to push for that. I'm less happy with his answer on student loans, and I'm less happy on his answer in China. Am I happy that he's actually coherent enough to be able to make actual arguments about this stuff? Yeah, he certainly does look better. He certainly has at least a grasp of what's going on, and he has his ideas of what he's pushing for. The next couple of fights we're going to have once the stimulus ends is we have to pass the John Lewis Act and the People's Rights Act, and these are the things that will allow our democracy to actually function more like a democracy. But those are videos that I'll cover at a later time. And all right, well, that's really it. Thank you for watching. My name is David, and this is Fresh Faces New Ideas.